Soccer is the most widely popular sport in the world, but in its tumultuous history in China, it has stumbled on its way to the spotlight. With China's immense population and burgeoning economic prosperity, many would expect world dominance, or at the very least competitiveness. What is holding China back from World Cup glory? The answer is simple: the system. It's dysfunctional at best and rotten in many ways, and China's footballing future is at stake. State-run, top-down control of youth selection is congruent with other communist sporting practice, but unfortunately it is not as successful in developing good soccer players as, say, swimmers, gymnasts, or pole vaulters. The practice of designating a child's sport based on build alone unnecessarily narrows down the talent pool and does not apply well to soccer, a sport whose stars come in all sizes. The stocky Diego Maradona or his fellow Argentine, the diminutive Lionel Messi, would both surely have missed the cut had they been born in China. Instead, the two are often pitted against each other in conversations about the best player of all time. The practice has definitely hindered China's ability to develop world-class players, but off-the-pitch events have had a far more damaging impact on the sport's image. Following the economic reforms of the early 90s, the CCP slowly allowed teams to commercialize and eventually established a professional league called the Chinese Super League. 1994 marked the beginning of the professional era in China, and a decade of scandal soon followed. As clubs acquired corporate sponsors and investor backings, player salaries went up and the league got more competitive. Commercialization brought a huge influx of cash into an already weak bureaucracy and resulted in rampant corruption. State-owned teams seeking a competitive edge began pouring government money into those clubs. Privately owned clubs matched, and close competition sent player salaries skyrocketing. This pay spiral dilemma has afflicted other countries, England and Spain being good examples. It can drive smaller, poorer clubs out of competition, which is bad for business as a league. In order to keep up, smaller clubs had to be more creative with their revenue incomes, and this is where things get shady. Gambling and soccer are closely related. With hundreds of variations of bets, whether it's the number of goals, when they'll come, the number of cards, and many more, gamblers have plenty of choices upon which to place their bets. This massive gambling culture naturally lends itself to match fixing. Smaller clubs began to fix matches as favors to local government officials in return for cash flow. Regular practice was for small clubs to accept bribes in order to throw matches. Knowing the intended outcomes, betting officials were able to rake in the winnings. With match fixing and general corruption going completely unchecked, gambling syndicates, including the infamous triads, began taking huge advantages of the system. Pressure was put on investors, coaches, players, and certainly referees to fix matches, usually in the form of bribes. The economists probably said it best when they said, "The spoils system was created and everyone took their cuts." By the turn of the century, the focus in the world of Chinese soccer had shifted entirely to making money, leaving concerns about quality and integrity in the dust. Corporate sponsors began pulling their support of clubs due to the dishonest nature of the league. One off-sided business executive, chief of Geely car manufacturers, illustrated the shocking levels gambling had risen to in the sport, stating that bribes of 1 to 2 million yuan for a single match were not uncommon. The reason this rampant misconduct went unpunished is simple. In typical communist style, the ruling body in charge of investigating and doling out punishments for corruption, the Chinese Football Association, was a key figure in the organization of match fixing. It took until 2001 for any official oversight via the CFA to be put into place, and the organization's mixed interests combined with the upcoming 2002 World Cup finals resulted in a complete whitewashing of the situation. The 2002 FIFA World Cup, hosted by Japan and Korea, was China's first and only World Cup finals appearance. The national team failed to score a goal in its 3 matches and did not advance from group play. The early exit and sorry showing disgraced soccer fans across China and was a painful indicator to the informed fan of how sick the sport was becoming in their country. Corporate sponsors and investors in the Chinese Super League also took note. China's poor performance on the world stage prompted many backers to pull their support, which only worsened the influence of gambling syndicates. The financial shrinkage experienced by many clubs directly affected the inflated salaries of players across the league, making bribes even more tempting for many. A surging Chinese economy at the time did little to alleviate the problem, causing the sum of bribes to escalate and gambling in general to increase nationwide. In 2007, things finally hit the fan. The investigation was not in mainland China, but rather Singapore. A match-fixing scandal was uncovered and the paper trail led back to Chinese ringleader. The result was an investigation by police that uncovered widespread match-fixing in northeastern China. Broader investigation led to the second major corruption scandal to rock Chinese soccer in a decade. The investigation started in 2009 and closed 3 years later. All told, 56 people were convicted and sentenced for misconduct related to match fixing. 33 were banned for life, and Shanghai Shenhua was stripped of a title. Nan Yang, former top exec at the CFA, and his predecessor, Xie Yalong, were two of the most high-profile convictions, both sentenced to 10 years behind bars for accepting bribes exceeding 1 million yuan. Two other members of the Football Association were also given long prison terms, one of which was Wei Xiaowei, team manager and former national team captain, who received an equal sentence to Xie and Nan. 4 former national team members, all of which were incidentally a part of the unimpressive World Cup side, were given up to 6 years. Naturally, referees were also implicated, and ultimately 4 were jailed for accepting bribes. Most notable was referee Lu Jun, nicknamed the Golden Whistle by fans for his consistent performances and assumed incorruptibility. Jun was sentenced to 6 years for accepting bribes exceeding $128,000 to fix 7 games. Obviously, these revelations have wreaked havoc on the sport's image in China, damage that could have lasting effects on soccer's future in the country. While fan support is still high, there is little pretense among them that the sport has been cleaned up. In stadiums across the country, fans can be heard shouting, "Hey Xiao," black whistle, and "Da Jia Qiu," playing fake ball. Meanwhile, young fans and particularly players are growing more and more scarce, a worrying fact of life for anyone with high hopes for Chinese soccer. Between 2000 and 2005, the number of Chinese teens playing organized soccer dwindled from roughly 600,000 to 180,000. As of June 2011, the number of registered youth players was smaller still, estimated at 100,000, in comparison to the roughly 3 million Americans registered with the U.S. Youth Soccer Association. In light of massive scandals and poor performances on the national team as a result of corruption, parents are wary of the sport. The soccer world is perceived as dirty, and parents don't want to risk it corrupting what is most likely their only child. In a country where children face intense competition throughout their lives, many parents view soccer as a waste of time. Focusing on one's education, which in the Chinese system centers around standardized tests that require many hours of after-school preparation, is seen, rightfully so, as a more legitimate means of upward social mobility. The root cause of the problems Chinese soccer has encountered and challenges they'll continue to face is the system. It is still highly unregulated, developmentally outdated, and easily abused. Until drastic changes take place at the fundamental and systematic level, soccer in China will remain in a tenuous and dire position. If, or maybe when, another scandal breaks, it might spell out a red card for the world's game in its most populous country.